So we've discussed the importance of water in bath bombs. We've shown the importance of water in bath bombs. We have discussed the importance of, obviously baking soda and citric acid. We have talked about different additions that you can put in within your dry ingredients to prolong the fizz or help the bombs float. We've talked about the ratios between baking soda and citric acid and how you can get a more explosive fizz or a more delicate fizz. Now, today, we are going to talk about all of the surfactants that you can put into bath bombs, the pros and cons with all of that. And we are also going to talk about the different oils and butters that you can use for substitutions. So we should probably get to that. I will tell you more about everything I just said in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for week 26 of year 3 and a bath bomb back to basics video number 7, wherein we're going to do a wrap-up of everything effectively that you guys have been asking about in the comments of the last videos. So, all the stuff that I just said, plus whatever else comes to mind, while I am making some cloud bath bombs. The cloud bath bombs are going to be made in a silicone mold using the embeds that we made in the very beginning of the series with the FD&C colorants. So let's get to the video. We will make those. We will talk about all the things and see what else comes up. Apologies for delays on this one. I know I wanted to get everything out at the same time, but I decided to refilm this video and really try to mess with my environment to see if I can get a higher humidity than what I've been able to show you thus far, to essentially show you in what instance I would use witch hazel over a water. Because if you have a lot of water in the air, it's essentially creating that binder, and really what you need to do is dry out the batch. And so I played around with it, turned off all of my dehumidifiers, turned off all of my exhaust fans, turned up my heater, and I was able to get to about 75% humidity in the shop. So this is the recipe that I will be showing you, while we talk about all of the extra fun stuff you can add to your bath bombs. So with this particular recipe, we're going to keep it simple as far as the dry ingredients. So 2 cups baking soda, 1 cup citric acid that is added last. And then for the liquid, 1 tablespoon of oil, 1 tablespoon of the scent, and 1 tablespoon of witch hazel. And we can test these results at the end of all of this too. Now, for the fun stuff that you can start adding to your bath bombs once you've figured out that whole moisture content and how much you can play. So let's start out with the dry ingredients. Now, my basic rule of thumb for bath bombs is 2 parts baking soda, 1 part citric acid, and up to 1 part everything else as far as dry ingredients go combined. And so what are those dry ingredients? Well, those are your stabilizers. So your kaolin clays, your arrowroots, your cornstarches, your cream of tartars. Those are your bubblers, your SLSA, your SCIs. Those are your skin soothers, right? So Epsom salts and milk powders and CBD powders. I mean, there's a lot that can go into a bath bomb to make it extra special and awesome. But with all those extras comes, the problem wherein you start messing with the batches and you can start getting failed bath bombs, which is why it's so important to understand the moisture content of your bath bombs and how you can adjust it. Because in high humidity environments, you really don't need to adjust your water ratios in a bath bomb recipe because, you're dealing with higher humidities as you're adding these dry ingredients. But in a drier climate, so anything kind of under 50% within your environment, you're going to have to start adjusting your liquid. But for now, again, let's talk about the dry ingredients, and let's start with the stabilizers. I tend to look at the things that you put into the bath bomb in 2 ways. A, the cost effectiveness, and 2, the usefulness. And so for the stabilizers, again, as we've discussed, my favorites are arrowroot, cornstarch, and kaolin clay, all very cost effective, all do essentially the same thing within the bath. Yes, they have some skin benefits, but really you're going to be doing it for the stabilizing factor as well as for the extending of the bath bomb fizz. So with that, I would add probably half a cup in a batch like this. There's really no reason to add anything more than that. And in all honesty, you can get away with less. The stabilizer that I haven't really talked about is cream of tartar. I do not use cream of tartar because of the cost effectiveness. It is a very pricey ingredient, and I would prefer to keep that for something wherein cream of tartar is actually needed, like in a bubble bar. So I do not put them in my bath bombs because it is so expensive. Now onto your dry bubblers. The most common ones you're going to find in recipes will be SLSA and SCI. SLSA is going to have a better foaming, bubbler than the SCI, because while both are water soluble, SCI is not as much so. It actually does need some encouragement. And so SLSA will be easier. You look on the recipes online and it goes anywhere from half of the weight of the citric acid or the amount of citric acid to up to the citric acid. So if we're looking at a cup of citric acid in a recipe, so 10 ounces of SLSA, just given the price point for SLSA at, I don't know, it's about $1 an ounce wherever you look. It's a very expensive bubbler to put into a bath bomb, and I honestly don't think you need that much. We have done tests on SLSA and SCI, both at a half of a cup within a batch this size, and they both produced a very fine bubble. SLSA would be a better bubble, as we saw with those tests. But if you can stomach the price, then yeah, I would go SLSA over SCI. SLSA will tend to dry out your bath bombs even more, so working within high humidity, good. For sure, working within lower humidity, you will need to be adjusting your liquid ingredients to ensure that it doesn't get overly powdery and crumbly. That's also the case with SCI. Both of these are very important that you know the moisture content and you have bath bombs already figured out before you start playing with them, just because of how expensive they are. So do keep that in mind. And also, I do believe that there are better bubblers out there that are not in the dry ingredients. We will talk about those in the liquid ingredients coming up for sure. Finishing up with the dry ingredients, let's go on to the skin beneficial ingredients, right? And so your oat milk powders, your coconut milk powders, your goat milk powders, your Epsom salts, your CBD powder, all of the things all do have a benefit to the skin and the soaking experience outside of the actual stability of the bath bomb. And so yeah, cool. You should definitely consider incorporating those if you're looking for a specific type of balm, because they're soothing, they're skin soothing, they're moisturizing, they're good for relaxation, all of the jazz. I would include those at, again, that full up to 1 part of your, total weights or measurements or whatever, or in conjunction with a stabilizer. So half a cup of your stabilizer, your kaolins, your arrowroots, etc., and half a cup of your oat milk, your goat's milk, all of those things in powdered form. Putting in a couple tablespoons of those sorts of things, because they're meant to be beneficial to the skin, it's not really going to do it in a recipe. If you're actually wanting a benefit from it, even though you can't really say that there's a benefit because, we have rules that we have to follow with cosmetics, I would definitely go at least a half a cup in a recipe this size. So half of the amount of the citric acid you put in up to the full amount of citric acid that you put in. That's kind of it for dry ingredients. Let's go on to make a different batch of bath bombs and talk about the liquid ingredients. Okay, now on to liquid alternatives. First up, let's talk about the bubblers in the liquid version. So you can go with cocomidopropyl betaine or cocoa betaine, either one. Cocoa betaine is going to be the natural version, and it's made out of, coconut oil as well as, I think, beets, if I remember correctly. And cocomidopropyl betaine is synthetic and natural, and both serve the same function. So they are going to provide a nice bubble when in water and even in cold water. The problem with both of those, though, is that they're kind of known allergens. There have been loads and loads of reports since like 1983 about the irritants that come within cocoa betaine or cocomidopropyl. So do keep that in mind. If you are going to use it, I would suggest using it at 1 tablespoon, replacing your water within a recipe. Now, so it will act as the binder. You do have to be careful, and it's a really short working time with cocoa betaine or cocomidopropyl, just because it has a tendency to sort of expand. And so I personally don't put it into like actual bath bombs. It would be great for a toilet bomb because it does do really well in cold water as far as foaming up really nicely. But because of the skin irritant, it's really not worth it for me. Polysorbate 80 has a less of a bad rap when it's all said and done. And you can put that in a tablespoon of it into a batch this size in addition to whatever binder you're using without any sorts of problems. And it is very inexpensive. It has a very good impact. It has a beautiful bubble, and it's very easy to incorporate into batches. And so if you didn't want to go the dry route and you wanted to go liquid, I would go with polysorbate 80 over the cocoa betaine or the cocamidopropyl betaine. Also, when we were doing this, Miss A commented on one of the videos and asked about using soap nut water, essentially. And I really like that idea. I do remember us doing like a toilet bomb series wherein I put in the dry version of soap nuts into it. And it had a really good lather within, the cold water of a toilet bowl. But I'd never considered actually doing the extraction in water and using that as a replacement for the water within the recipe. And I think that's a great idea. And I'm looking forward to seeing her tests on it and how well that performs. And I do think that it would probably perform reasonably well. Soap nuts are great. Also great for label appeal because when you start putting cocoa betaine or cocamidopropyl or polysorbate 80 or SEI or SLSA, people are going to start asking questions. You have to start answering them. And so for label appeal, soap nuts, that looks a lot better. So I think that's a decent option. Having not tested it in its liquid form, I would, again, just replace the 1 tablespoon of water within this particular batch size with the soap nut water and go from there. I think it would work. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing what Miss A's tests with all of that are. She will report back and I will let you all know. As far as the rest of the liquid ingredients that you can put in, again, we've already talked about witch hazel and alcohol. You're about to see under what circumstances, the witch hazel is a really great thing to put in, i.e. high humidity circumstances because of the drying nature of it. Yeah, that's kind of it. I'm not missing anything, am I? I mean, obviously we need to talk about the liquid ingredients as far as oils go, but that's kind of its own little subset because for oils, for me, the oils that you put in the batch, well, yes, you do want some oils or, whatnot. In order to get it, if you're really wanting your cocoa butter or your shea butter to be like a moisturizing and nourishing type experience, I don't think a 1 tablespoon, like I put in the 1 tablespoon of oil in this, is going to be that impactful over the course of an entire bath. And so I would prefer to put in a cocoa butter or shea butter and make it like, a butter bomb by using embeds of essentially a bath melt recipe instead of replacing the oil that's within the bath bomb batch itself. And within a bath bomb recipe, you can go anywhere between like 1 and 10% of oils or butters and just kind of mix and match and play with that. But do be careful because that could lead to more failed bombs. Now, on to the results of this. Now, both batches were made in 75% humidity, and these are the ones that were made with the 1 tablespoon of witch hazel instead of water, and they are rock hard. They are very, very nice. It served its function, essentially, of drying out the actual bath bomb batch itself because it was so humid in here that this recipe was going to, by nature, start pulling everything from the air. So if you are in a high humidity environment, using witch hazel would be great because it is going to dry things out. You are still going to run the risk of the bath bombs not looking as smooth as they would normally with just using water. So putting in something like an arrowroot would really help smooth out that overall appearance. But all things considered, nothing really, you don't have any real problems with it, and they're all surviving a drop test. There's just some little dings and whatnot that I would prefer to not see in there. Now, this is the one that I made earlier in low humidity using water in I think the very first video. And they're very similar. They both survived drop tests. They both do their thing. And they both, I think, weigh around the same amount. This one actually, I think these ones with just the water are a little bit heavier than the ones with the witch hazel. And, made the exact same way. But yeah, we're losing about half an ounce of weight with all of that. So there's that. I mean, as far as what that means, that's more environmental and the circumstances that they were made more than anything else. But the one with witch hazel is more likely to float. So that's good to know. Now, onto the these ones here. So the cloud bombs I actually made in the same environment, so 71 to 75% humidity, and I used water instead of, the witch hazel, and they formed just fine. You can also see that they did expand, though. They did take on water when they were in, this high of a humidity environment. So we definitely had some expanding going on within the mold. Nothing terrible, though. That is a nice trick, though, if you are making bath bombs on an overly humid day and you kind of have to make bath bombs. Consider making them in silicone molds like this, that you can peel everything back. They can dry out in the mold, so it's not going to be overly, weird as they're drying out. So put the fan on them after you are done making, or while you are making, so they can lose as much of that water as possible, and go from there. They are rock hard. They're going to perform beautifully in the tub, which is next up. We are going to see all of these in action, so we can check out the fizzy liftoff and the floatability and the bubbleability and all the things. We're looking forward to that one. And sorry about the fast talking with all of this. There's just a lot of information to get out in one thing to answer all the questions that have been brought up, so I hope that worked. And there they are, some very beautiful cloud bath bombs. And yeah, I think playing catch up, clean up with all of the extra questions that we might have. Ideally, this is your walking stage. And so all of the questions that are out there surrounding, can I use cocoa butter? Can I use shea butter? What percentages, etc. and so forth? That's in your running stage. So I have provided some good baselines for all of that. Remember, since the oil doesn't have any real impact on how firm your bath bombs get, you can definitely play around within those oils, but if you start getting too heavy with your butters or your oils, it can end up with pooling in the bathtub. So that's the biggest thing to keep in mind, but other than that, yeah, sticking around 1% of the total batch weight, that's a good place to start. Between 1 and 5% is going to be really good for your oils and butters. For the dry ingredients, for your surfactants, I mean, me personally, I really like polysorbate 80 because it's the easiest by far. You get a big, beautiful foam with a polysorbate 80. It's a liquid ingredient, just a tablespoon, a little bit will do it. It's not going to change the consistency of the bombs, whereas with your SLSA and your SCI and your cocoa betaine, you end up with some problems. And usually those problems are in the form of needing to pair another surfactant with it to ensure it bubbles, or in the case of cocoa betaine, experiencing the expanding. And so you do have to pay attention with that. Those are more running techniques, and those are things that you can start playing around with now. I have made a whole bunch of videos on all of those and done tests as far as, we've done toilet bombs, we've done regular bath bombs and test their foam, their fizz, all the things. So definitely go check out those videos too, now that you have the basics underneath you. Now, next up in this series is going to be the testing of all of these bath bombs because, we've made them and we want to see how they all perform. So that will be coming up next. Definitely stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, do the things so you get notified when it happens. But yeah, thank you for joining me for all of this. This has been a really fun Back to Basics playlist. As I've said multiple times in all of this, I really enjoy doing them. So I hope you enjoyed them as well. Sudsers, thank you so much for existing, for being you. I really enjoy you. And I hope you guys are having a great time and are getting ready for an awesome 4th of July experience. If you guys are vending any shows, let me know. Like in the comments or in the Discord or all the things. That would be awesome. But I'm out of here. I will see you guys all again for the test day round of bath bombing fun. Bye.